Hello, everyone. Welcome back once again to the 2020 Small Farms Winter Webinar Series, hosted by the University of Illinois Extension's Local Food Systems and Small Farms team. Once again, this is Zach Grant, Local Food Systems and Small Farm Educator in Cook County, your moderator and coordinator for your weekly dive into all things small farms. We really appreciate you joining us for these webinars, and we will do our best to begin and end within the space of your lunch hour. This is a tight time frame for our educators to deliver in-depth, actionable information, so please understand why we will limit your questions to the text box, or Q&A box rather, at the for the presentation. And I'll do my best to make sure our presenters answer them as time allows. This presentation is being recorded, and I will email a link to the archive presentation as soon as possible after this program continues. There will also be a link for a short online evaluation of this presentation included in that email. So we really appreciate your feedback on these webinars. At the end, you will also notice a QR code on the last slide that will link you directly to the evaluation that we're going to be using. We're also using Zoom's webinar platform this year, so there's just a few additional features. There's a poll that you notice at the bottom of your screen. Some of you have already taken it, and this is our voluntary anonymous demographic form that's really helpful for us in Extension. The Q&A section and chat box are different. The Q&A section is where we want you to put your questions that you have for the presenter, and we can answer those either in presentation or at the end as time allows. The chat box can be used for all things technical assistance. This week's presentation, we're going to be discussing selling through food hubs and co-ops, and my colleague, Local Food Small Farm Educator Lori George, will be leading this discussion. On the webinar to assist, we're really happy to have a grower's perspective in Katie Bishop, Operations Manager from Prairie Earth Farm, and Liz DeRunce, Operations Manager from Leaf Food Hub. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Lori take this away.
All right, thank you very much, Zach. When I first started doing research on food hubs and growers' perspectives, there wasn't a whole lot out there. There was a lot out there on how to develop a food hub, how to create the business structure, find the funding, but there wasn't a whole lot as to what the grower really needs to be aware of before they start selling through an aggregation center. So today what I want to do is to talk more on the grower's side. I want to talk about some of the challenges that some of the growers and the buyers have, because some of the challenges that you have as a grower also reaches over to the buyer's side. We'll talk about the concepts of co-ops and food hubs and what the differences are. We'll talk about aggregation benefits and considerations, and how to incorporate aggregation into your business. And that's where our guest speakers, both Liz and Katie, will discuss some of the avenues that they work with. So growers today have a lot of challenges to overcome, from funding to acquiring land and equipment to marketing and distribution, all of which are important components in order for a farm to survive. Growers can find it difficult to make the jump from selling at small roadside stands or local farmers markets to selling larger quantities. Extra land, equipment, supplies, all this can draw from the bottom line profits of your farm. Standing at a farmer's market for 46 hours or trying to find buyers for your produce can be time-consuming and difficult. Items to think about when expanding your production. Is your packing facility able to handle the increased production load? Do you have cooler space? What about production and harvesting equipment? Do you need to upgrade your transportation vehicles? Here's a big one. Will you need to increase your labor force? Will you have the time to train them? With the increase in production and hopefully income, you'll need to reach out to an accounting firm to handle tax questions or an insurance agent to make sure you have the necessary requirements met, such as general or product liability before selling. For smaller growers, it can be difficult to match supply and demand for the produce. If you're reaching out to the local food hub or co-op to sell, then the requirements of the buyers will determine the quality, the quantity, and food safety concerns. Working with the aggregation centers requires coordination efforts on planting dates, crop varieties, how much is being produced, and when the product is going to be available. And without this coordinated effort with everyone, there may be times when overproduction can occur, which would then reduce the prices for the products that you're trying to sell. Seasonality is basically having the produce available when it's needed. Using season extenders such as high tunnels, row covers, and greenhouses to meet the needs of the buyers for as long as possible is going to be a definite plus. You coordinate the planting and harvest dates for your crops, what varieties should be grown that work well for you, or based on what the buyers may want, how many plants to grow. With aggregation centers such as food hubs and co-ops, the grower may need to give up that decision-making process, as the aggregation center may have a better idea of what the buyer wants and needs. And this may require you to make some changes on the farm. With infrastructure and the supply chain, generally smaller growers have difficulty in getting their products to market, especially with transportation vehicles, maybe temperature control requirements, depending on the crop that you have, and storage of products on farm prior to shipping. Some co-ops or food hubs require the grower to follow standard packing and grading requirements on the farm before the package or the product is delivered. This can include using clean and new boxes, which can then cut into the profit of your farm. Talking about capital, this is always a concern with farmers. Finding funding for seeds, equipment, soil amendments, labor, as I mentioned earlier, transportation, farm insurance and liability requirements, just to name a couple of them. Some aggregation centers may not pay the grower for 30 to 60 days after the product is delivered. You should have an invoicing and record-keeping system in place to keep track of the money owed to you and have an understanding with the entity of when you want to be paid. The knowledge to succeed, you need that knowledge. You need the tools and the materials in order to make it in today's marketplace, not only on the production side, but in the business aspects as well. Conferences and workshops, training programs are available, but not everyone has access to them, especially if you live in a rural area. For example, the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, produce rule is a new mandatory law that all growers should be aware of. When talking about prices, wholesale prices versus retail prices, and this is probably the biggest concern with small to mid-sized growers, is how to price their fruits and vegetables. Food hubs and co-ops will generally purchase the products from the growers at a wholesale price, and then in turn will sell to the buyer close to or at retail prices. Many growers that I've spoken with are reluctant to sell at these lower prices, basically because they may not break even with what their expenses were for the production of that product. This is where the farmer either makes the decision to increase production to make sure you break even or not sell through these aggregation centers. For pricing on wholesales, the current wholesale prices of products in the marketplace can be found at the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service website shown on the slide. These regional reports are listed from wholesale markets, production areas, and ports of entry throughout the United States, and will give the most current prices for most products. These challenges that I mentioned can be really hard to overcome. Just remember, the jump from being a small grower to a mid-sized grower or larger is generally not done overnight. It may take 2 to 3 years with a lot of planning before it comes to fruition. When talking with several local aggregation centers, I have found that there are some things that they may expect from the grower before they buy. These findings are also discussed in a paper published by the Leopold Center through Iowa State University. First one is product availability. So the challenges that growers have concerning product availability or seasonal production or a dependable volume is also a concern for the buyers. Many of the customers that buy from an aggregation center, such as retail stores, restaurants, and schools, depend on them to have the products to meet their demands. If you as a grower state that you'll have a quantity of product at a specific time and you're unable to meet the expectations, the buyer will need to have a heads up as to the discrepancy in the order so they can notify their customers. If you're unable to maintain your volume on a regular basis, then the aggregation center may slow or stop buying from you. Try to avoid this type of a scenario if possible. Buyers may require the farm to provide liability or product insurance. Some farms have insurance to cover products sold from the farm, but this may not be sufficient for sales to intermediate markets. Policies will vary depending on the product, such as fresh fruits and vegetables, or if you're trying to sell meats or dairy products. So finding a local insurance agent may be difficult, and it may depend on where you live. Having good agricultural practices certification with third-party audits may be required before the aggregation center will accept your food products, or they may require you to complete the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, produce rule training. If you're not familiar with FSMA, it's a mandatory federal law signed into effect in 2011 that requires the grower that sells over a certain amount over a 3-year period to complete a training course that covers good agricultural practices on the farm. These grower training classes are available in every state throughout the United States. The Produce Safety Alliance website listed on the slide will assist you in finding a grower training in your area. Buyers may expect you to sell only products that you've grown on your farm and will not allow reselling. If you're not familiar with the term of reselling, generally this is where the farm buys the products from another source, such as a produce auction, or their next door neighbor has 20 pounds of tomatoes that he's trying to get rid of. Basically, reselling is selling products that you yourself did not grow. Some aggregation centers may require organic products or require the farmer to follow organic standards. If organic and your produce is organic, make sure you have the required certification paperwork available. The co-op or food hub may or may not want the use of pesticides on the products. So it's all going to depend on the business rules and requirements of who you're selling to. Buyers will want farmers to comply with wholesale packing standards, not just bringing products to market in the back of your pickup truck in bulk. So this can include things like specific packing boxes for the product that you're trying to sell, maybe doing some sizing and grading on the farm, generally to try and match what the wholesale market is looking for. And you as a grower may need to provide transportation of your products to the aggregation center. If you transport the product to the co-op or food hub, then the price that is offered for the product may be higher. This is because the buyer does not need to spend the money to pick up the boxes from the farm. And for some reason, for some aggregation centers, you may need to be a local grower based on their definition of local. So local can really vary. So whether you're talking about co-ops or food hubs, that definition can really vary depending on the aggregation center's rules and regulations. So when we're talking about locavores, and you see this a lot in some of the publications, but basically that's a local resident and that likes their food sourced within 50 to 150 miles. The 2008 Farm Act defined local as being produced within 400 miles. And the USDA definition is a food product that is raised, aggregated, stored, processed, and distributed in the locality or region in which the final product is marketed. So with this variation of the definition of local, It's generally going to be the co-op or the food hub that makes the determination for their business. So, which is best for you, a co-op or a food hub? What I want to do now is to be able to break down the differences between the two. So let's start with cooperatives or co-ops. The USDA definition of a co-op is an organization or organizations formed for the purpose of producing and marketing goods or products owned collectively by members who share in the profits. Co-ops generally use their members, meaning not only are the farmers customers of the co-op, but they can also be members of the co-op. So according to the Small Business Development Corporation, a cooperative is a member-owned business structure with at least 5 members, all of whom have equal voting rights, regardless of their level of involvement or investment in the business. All members are expected to be involved in and help run the cooperative. Lack of commitment from the members is frequently the reason for cooperative business failures. Co-ops are generally service-driven rather than profit-driven, meaning that the co-op would provide the members with services and goods that would otherwise be unavailable to them as an individual business. The bargaining power of the co-op occurs when the co-op member numbers increase. For example, if you're purchasing products in bulk, such as seeds or fertilizers, maybe pesticides or the packing materials, such as clean boxes or anything like that, or any other items. This can also include lower costs associated with food safety requirements, such as buying cleaning and sanitizing products, labeling and product traceability issues, or assistance with GAPs, good agricultural practices, auditing requirements, such as offering a group GAP program. Shared benefits can also include shared equipment or facilities for washing, packing, storage, and transportation of products, which may be cost prohibitive to independent small farmers. Just remember to keep in mind the potential for food safety risks when you're using these type of facilities, such as cross-contamination when produce from one farm is intermixed with another produce from another farm. Formal or informal partnerships. The businesses may have a specific legal structure or maybe a simple collaboration between the farmers. The more formal the partnership, the greater the need for rules and regulations. Producers may need to have an additional level of knowledge or skill that would benefit the business as a whole. And there may be annual fees associated with a grower co-op. The business may or may not have a distribution of profits to the members at the end of the fiscal year. So which co-op is best? This will depend on how much time you want to spend, both in production and management aspects. So looking at the considerations for the smaller co-ops, you may need to spend more time and energy managing and working at the business itself in order for it to remain viable, which may take you away from the farm. Knowledge will be needed in business aspects, such as running a supply chain, packing and grading per buyer requirements, maybe some food safety requirements. Smaller, less informal cooperatives may give you, the grower, a greater level of control over the decision-making process, or have more opportunity to decide on prices charged to buyers, or volume, and variety of products to grow. And with a smaller co-op, it may be easier for the producer to enter or leave the business since there's less rules and regulations associated with it. When you start looking at some of the larger co-ops or some of the considerations for that, these larger co-ops generally have a more formal legal structure, larger volumes of product, larger distribution avenues, and a larger customer base. This is all great for the grower if he's looking to diversify or grow. The co-op may have part-time or permanent staff, which means that you may spend less time with day-to-day activities and more time on your farm. With the larger co-ops, the growers may still have a voice in the decision-making process, but with the larger co-op, it may not need that individual expertise as they can hire the individuals to do those jobs. And larger co-ops connect with the buyers directly and generally have a reliable connection for marketing the smaller farm produce. They can also purchase larger quantities of product per buyer demand. So looking at food hubs, which is going to be a little bit different than the co-ops. So a food hub, according to the USDA Department of Ag, is a centrally located facility with a business management structure facilitating the aggregation, storage, processing, distribution, and/or marketing of locally or regionally produced food products. These entities bring together individual growers, producers, and cooperatives, and enables them to increase supply, address product transportation concerns, among other things. They can be considered a middleman between the local farmer and institutional buyers, such as restaurants or hospitals, schools, as well as the end consumer, by offering a wider access to these outlets for the small and mid-sized producers. They have connections and may have a better understanding of what the buyer wants. They are also year-round, which is beneficial for those that grow during the winter months using greenhouses or high tunnels. Food hubs can increase access of fresh, healthy food for the consumers, either through distribution avenues that are not attainable by you, a small grower, or by offering retail sales on site to their local communities. And they generally have a positive impact on the local economy. They're generally committed to purchasing from small to mid-sized local farms, as well as large farms, and this can influence the need for additional jobs. Food hubs also have the potential to reach out to food deserts and underserved areas where the food is needed. Depending on the business structure of the organization, they can increase access of fresh, healthy food for local food deserts and low-income communities. Over and above providing access to new markets, which can increase market shares for you, the food hubs can also provide several functions. Technical support and training by providing educational programming to buyers and producers. They can also assist growers in coordinating planting schedules for a consistent supply of produce, which can enhance the production practices on the farm and increase overall productivity. Hubs may be able to assist with gaps training or auditing and food safety concerns. They can also help with improving the post-harvest handling and packing techniques on the farms, among other things. Food hubs allow for greater distribution of local foods while still retaining the local identity of the farm or product. They can give buyers the opportunity to buy larger quantities with more consistent availability than what you can do independently. With food hubs, the coordination of production with the growers may be necessary to have the products available, which means that you, as the grower, may need to transfer the decision-making process of what to plant to the aggregation center or the buyer. Food hubs may be able to offer warehouse, storage, processing, and retail facilities to you. Aggregation of products can broaden this product selection to the buyer and are typically marketed, branded, and distributed under the entities label. But it's also possible for the food hub to assist you in developing your farm branding, your packaging, and labeling for your farm. They can also help provide proper temperature and humidity controlled storage for your products, either long-term or short-term. And they can sort and package items to market specification and help facilitate exchanges between you and the buyer to arrive at a best price for everyone. Transportation and distribution. Food hubs can assist with pickup and delivery of products for the small farmer, which relates to a reduced carbon footprint. As one large delivery and/or pickup is completed, as opposed to growers making independent trips. It allows the farmers to bundle their products. It gives the consumer a greater diversity of products. You as a grower can focus more on production, not marketing, and can allow for more consistent availability of products. Also maintains a consumer-producer connection by allowing the local product to retain its identity, which allows the consumer to maintain the connection to that specific local farm. This is great if you're really looking to get your farm name and products into local commerce. And depending on the food hub itself, many of them can negotiate a fair price to the growers and often pay the producer 60 to 80% of the price paid by the buyer. So in today's world, there are many different types of business structures that the co-op or food hub could be working under. How each one functions could make a difference to your farm business. The structure itself relates to how the business is set up, its tolerance for risk, and its financial status. A publication by Rachel Armstrong from Farm Commons called The Farmer's Guide to Business Structures is an excellent resource that covers the different types of business entities. Every business entity, whether it's a privately held LLC or a not-for-profit 501c3, carries legal implications as to who has rights and privileges, who has the authority to make decisions, when and how owners draw on the profits, and who is liable for those decisions and actions. Each one has good points and drawbacks. Informal may be just a group of growers getting together to aggregate their products. Produce auctions could be just a middleman between the grower and the buyer, or a producer co-op where the members actually own the co-op. The most significant benefit of a formal business entity, such as an LLC, is that the owner's personal assets can be protected from the business's liabilities. Thanks in part to the younger generations, virtual or online markets are also becoming prevalent. Growers are able to post product availability, customers go online to order, the business entity designates a customer pickup location and time frame. Payments by the customer is complete when a product is ordered or when the product is picked up. Differential pricing may be available based on that market's business structure. So when considering a co-op or a food hub business venture, you really need to start doing some research. First off, what is the purpose and mission of the business? Does it match the goals and values of your farm? What is the legal structure of the aggregation business? How much risk are you willing to put in for your farm? What are the requirements for the farmer in order to sell products through that entity? How much time do you have to assist with management responsibilities should you go with a business such as a smaller producer co-op? What type of market does the aggregation center cater to? Is it wholesale? Is it retail? Does it match what you want to try and do for your farm? Can you keep your farm's identity branding, or does it go under a single identity? How is price determined for the products? Are you able to work with the aggregation center to obtain necessary records for your files? Where is the food hub located in relation to where your farm is at? Do you have to deliver the product, or do they come pick it up at the farm? Does the business entity require product or general liability insurance, and what would be your cost for this? And does the co-op or food hub business venture require food safety training or GAP's third-party audit before they will buy from you? An excellent publication by Andy Pressman and Chris Lent, shown at the bottom there, goes into more detail on considerations and production-oriented topics that growers should evaluate before making a final decision. And so with that, talking about the virtual markets, what I'd like to do now is to bring in the first of our two speakers. And I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today. They both really have very unique perspectives with their businesses when talking about aggregation centers. If you have any questions for them during their talks, please then enter them into the Q&A box and they'll be answered shortly. This is your time to get your questions and concerns addressed when it comes to selling wholesale. So I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, Liz DeRunz, Operation Manager with Leaf Food Hub in Carbondale, Illinois. Liz, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you so much, Lori, and hello to everyone. So as Lori said, my name is Liz DeRunz. I'm the Operations Manager of Leaf. And if Lori, if you want to go on to the next slide, thank you very much. So what is Leaf? Leaf actually stands for the Little Egypt Alliance of Farmers. It was founded by 5 small Southern Illinois farms to support sustainable farming here in Southern Illinois. We are a bit of an unusual group of people in that we are a farmer-owned cooperative. So Leaf itself will cover the costs of boxes, the software and storefront, and marketing materials that we utilize. And we also help all of our farmers to buy in bulk. So we will get together and the farmers will buy seeds together, plastic bags, paper bags, and any other different items that they feel like they can share together. We are organized as an LLC. We do have bylaws and we are reviewing them annually. Additionally, we have meetings annually to discuss who is going to grow what. Many other cooperatives or certainly food hubs, will have certain requirements saying this is what we want. We actually look to each other to determine, who wants to grow what, because there are certain things that some people grow very well. There are other things that they don't, and there are certain things that we have found that many farmers just don't want to grow. So to give you a little bit of background on us in 2020, our main goal this year is really keeping it local. We are trying to feed Southern Illinois. We're trying to get more local food into more local hands. Leaf itself is unique because we provide a unique platform for sales. We sell exclusively online. We also have a high payout percentage for all the products for our farmers and growers. And we are focused on reducing farm and sales waste. If many of you have probably sold at a traditional farmers market setting, and you may have found that if you bring too much, you end up with food waste, but if you don't bring enough, you end up with a loss in sales. But our farmers know exactly how much to harvest, and I'll get more into that in a moment when I talk about how our online system works. Laura, if you want to go ahead and advance the slide, please. Thank you. So as I had talked a little bit about our goals, so online ordering can be easy, not only for the customer, but we've also found that for the farmers users, that they really enjoy using it because it's, not only is it simple, but it provides them, as I had said, with a reduction in their waste. So I'll break it down how we work on a week-to-week basis. So Thursdays, our farmers are listing their products online. Our storefront opens at noon on Fridays and it runs through Tuesdays at 8 p.m. On Tuesday night at 8:15, the farmers receive what we call a pick list. And from that pick list, they know exactly what they need to harvest. So they aren't, taking too much or harvesting too much. And then at Thursday at 2 p.m., those of us that are able, we gather, we pack our boxes, and we also take turns delivering to different locations throughout the Southern Illinois area. Lori asked me to touch on what we look for, when we're considering a new producer. And that last line that I have up there, respect, kind of says it all. We want people that not only respect themselves, but other farmers, sustainable practices, and of course the land itself. Because we are a cooperative, we're always trying to find other people that enjoy working with other people, because all decisions are made together and we see each other every single week. So you have to be willing to work well with others. And we do require that people are up to date on their licenses. All of our people that use cottage food, sell cottage food products, they must have their licenses up to date. If you sell meat, eggs, so on, must have up-to-date licenses. And we also ask that they do provide a copy of their insurance, just so that if we are having a gathering at their farm, we can ensure that people will be safe. And as I had said, the work dynamic, the group dynamic is very important. So you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to listen. And because we are simply online, we would love it if you had online experience, but of course, if not, that you would be willing to learn. And finally, the last thing we're kind of looking for is we like to see that people have had about a year of experience independently, because we found that working in a cooperative setting, it does require a lot from you. And we just want to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed with that new experience. So, and that is all I have, Lori.
Okay, great. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
So our second guest speaker for today is Katie Bishop. Katie's the operations manager with Prairie Earth Farms in Atlanta, Illinois. She's down there in the bottom left-hand corner there. Katie has another unique perspective, as her farm not only sells to an aggregation center, but she's also considered an aggregation center to some of the local farms throughout the area. Katie, welcome.
Thank you, everyone. So just briefly about our farm, we are in Atlanta, Illinois, which is in Logan County, right smack dab in the middle of the state. The farm is about 350 acres. We raise 35 acres of vegetables. The rest of that is pasture for our animals and row crops. So we're a family farm, extremely diverse, and our marketing efforts are also really diverse. We have a CSA, we do the farmers market, we sell to chefs and grocery stores, and then we sell into food hubs, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm not just the operations manager. I love that you said that, Lori, because I am like the business manager, but I'm also a farmer. And I just wanted to point that out there, that my husband Hans and I farm this with about 15 awesome staff people on our farm. So both growing the produce and marketing the produce. So if you want to go to the next slide, Lori. So first I'm going to talk to you about our practices of selling to food hubs, because that is really the most experience that we have. So we sell predominantly to 3 different hubs. Most of that produce goes to Chicago. So on the slide there, you can see those are the 3 that we sell to. Irvin Shelley's Fresh Picks, they sell to Chicago restaurants, some grocery stores, but a lot of what they do is sell, they have a CSA program, a box program. So they buy produce from us, and then they divide it up to go into their boxes. Local Foods is a big distributor up in Chicago. They were actually our first hub that we worked with, and they buy produce primarily, again, to sell to chefs, although they do sell into some cooperative grocery stores. And then the last one, and actually our biggest wholesale customer, is Down at the Farms. And this is with Marty and Will Travis of Spence Farm. If anybody's ever seen the movie Sustainable on Netflix, it really goes into his mission of acting as a hub. But it's so much more than a hub. It's a wonderful community of farmers in central Illinois. And Marty has these great relationships with chefs in Chicago, at Peoria, and a couple in Champaign, Illinois. But they're very high-end restaurants, and you get a fantastic price for your produce. The difference between Marty Down at the Farms and the other 2 hubs in Chicago is that Marty actually takes a percentage of the sale. He handles all the accounting, all the sales, working with the chefs. He does the deliveries, and then he just cuts you a check. So that's why he takes that 18%, is because he's doing some of the work for you. However, with Fresh Picks and Local Foods, you just pay the price that they set, basically. And you pay to ship it up, and you invoice them and that type of thing. So I can get more into selling to those guys if you have questions. I know Lori has some questions afterwards, but if you want to go ahead to the next slide, Lori, I'll talk to you about acting as a food hub. So 2 years ago, we received a grant. We were part of a project called, it's called the Fresh Picks Farmer Alliance, and it's in partnership with Irvin Shelley's Fresh Picks, the hub that we sell to. And they worked with four farmers in the Midwest and one in Wisconsin to allocate grant money to act as an aggregate in our area. So we were able to take some of that grant money and put it towards the things that you're seeing here in the picture. We had a brand new washing and packing facility, a very large commercial kitchen, I wish. It's a very large commercial cooler, a forklift, and our delivery truck. Obviously, just so you know, the grant was $34,000. Obviously, it did not cover all of these things, but we also asked our community to help pay for some of this in the form of a crowdfunding campaign, and that raised about another $25,000. The rest of the money we just took out in loans to pay for this project. So because we received money from our community, we wanted to be able to offer this service as acting as a hub to our local farmers to benefit the community. So we work with a few different farms in our area to get produce up to Chicago, to Champaign, and into Bloomington. So if you want to skip ahead one more slide, I want to show you some of the farmers that we worked with. So on the left, this is Jeff Hake. Jeff and his brother-in-law, Johnny, and his wife, Katie, own Funk's Grove Heritage Fruits and Grains, and they grow wheat, special varieties of corn, lots of different types of fruit, and they will have these pancake mixes and muffin mixes and all kinds of great stuff. But sometimes the orders aren't really big enough for them to go to Champaign or go to Bloomington, and we're already going there anyway. So we just take Jeff's product with us in our truck. And it goes a little bit more than that. We also connect Jeff and Katie and Johnny. We connect them with our buyers. We don't charge Jeff anything for this service because we believe that it's adding value to our community and we want to help our fellow farmers. So that's Jeff and Katie. We work with a flower farmer who has microgreens. We send those from Lexington, Illinois to Champaign, which is probably about an hour, 15 minutes away. So they don't have to make that drive. We're going there anyway. And then on the right is green beans and sweet corn from a farm in Washington, Illinois, which is also in central Illinois. And we were taking their beans and corn up to Chicago since we were already going up there. And then we also got them accounts in Bloomington and Champaign. So it's this wonderful ad hoc relationship with growers to not only help our fellow farmers, but to also richen the local food community in our area too. So there you go. That's what we do. That's what we do.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So there's a couple of unique perspectives here as well as some information. So, you know, we're going to start kind of a Q&A. If there's any questions out there from the participants, Zach, do you see anything out there?
Yeah, there's one question that came in so far, and definitely for those of you still on, get your questions in the Q&A box. There's a farm asking, how do you price your goods selling to a co-op or food hub as opposed to just selling at a farmer's market?
I think that would be Katie. You want to try that?
Sure. So this was a learning curve when we first started about 10 years ago, because obviously the price at the farmer's market was so much greater than what we could get selling at wholesale, whether that's to a food hub or cooperative grocery store. So that's kind of the problem with the vocabulary. When we're talking about co-op, there's co-op food aggregates like food hubs, and then there's co-op grocery stores. So I just want to make sure I understand exactly what you're talking about. But for the food hub part, basically, we first of all have to know how much it costs to produce our item. I think that's the number one thing. A lot of farmers, you know, they're trying to pick a price, but the first thing you have to do is know how much it actually costs to produce it. So once you have that price, then you can go in and meet with these buyers, and you have your price. This is what I want to get. They'll probably say it's too high, and you know how low you can go because you know how much it costs. So when we first started, I mean, I think our pricing structure was much higher than what it is now. We were kind of schooled by our co-ops on what the price was. And so really it's kind of just talking to other growers, seeing what they're selling it for, talking to your buyers of your co-op, see what price they're getting it for, and then comparing that to how much it actually costs you to produce what you're growing. But if you want to know how it compares, it's much less than what you're selling at the farmer's market.
And that's one of the concerns with the smaller growers, is being able to produce enough of the product in order to match what they would actually be making at the farmer's market, and gearing up and trying to get that production a little bit higher than what it normally would be if they sold just directly to a farmer's market.
Right. And I will say, when we received that grant to build our wash pack facility, the idea was that we would be able to reach farmers in central Illinois to send product up to Chicago, because we're right on 55 and we're already going there anyway. Unfortunately, with that particular hub, we were only able to work with one farm whose production was of scale that we could meet their prices. So that has been a big challenge for us in central Illinois. There's not very many medium to large size growers that are very mechanized in a couple crops that can offer that product at a lower price. Mm-hmm. But with down at the farms with Marty Travis, that's absolutely not the case. Not only does he give you a really fantastic price on your product, in some cases it's actually more than what I would charge at market before the 18%. But he's working, he works really hard to make sure that your product is valued at the right price. And so I've never been disappointed with the prices that he sets.
Excellent. Great. Any other questions, Zach?
There's one more so far, but just as a follow-up to that, Lori mentioned earlier in the introduction utilizing the USDA's agricultural marketing service. Katie or Liz, do you ever consult resources like that? I know that information is really a little bit more relevant for wholesale buyers, but do you ever consult information like that to help you, set price points, or for metrics to see if you're hitting or getting even close to what wholesale buyers are purchasing produce for?
This is Liz. So during our first year, we actually did rely pretty heavily upon it. But now we're in year 4, and we feel like we have a pretty good handle on knowing, what our customers are willing to pay, which does include, some wholesale. But it's definitely a learning process, as Katie had said, for sure.
Yeah, you'll find out if you're too high really quickly. The great thing is the buyers that we've worked with, all of the buyers have absolutely no problem telling you no, but continuing to work with you. They're not going to shut the door and say, oh, they're just way too high and not respond to your email. We can try and work on a price and negotiate a price. And in a lot of cases, we'll say we just can't get to that price, and find a nice middle ground that works for both of us.
And as one other follow-up to that, you mentioned cost of production, Katie, which I think is really important. And how important would you say that is to know early on if you're looking to venture into these markets? Or is that something that, particularly I guess with Prairie Earth, that you guys were paying more attention to as you scaled up and moved into these wholesale markets?
So at the beginning, I think it's very important that you know how to figure out the cost of production and you understand how important it is. And then you need a year's worth of growing experience to collect that data. That's my expert answer now after 10 years. I can tell you that we did not do those things. We still don't do those things for a lot of the crops that we grow. It changes every year based on weather and staffing costs and that type of thing. I think it's extremely important that you do it and that you figure out how to do it. Either, do it yourself or use a tool like Veggie Compass or something like that. That being said, I don't speak from experience with that.
No, that's great. Thank you. So there is one more question. And again, we have at least 10 minutes left. So any more questions, feel free to get them in the Q&A box. If someone is asking kind of a general question, I think for both guest speakers, what do you wish you had known that you learned the hard way?
About working with food hubs specifically, I'm assuming is the.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's a hard one. I don't have an answer.
It's kind of like when you started out as a small farm, I bet you had some growing pains, that type stuff, moving from a farmer's market maybe to a wholesale market.
You know, actually I do have a good one. I'm not going to name names, but there was one of the food hubs that we work with well, actually, I think all of the ones have done this. At the beginning of the season, they give us projections on the crops that they anticipate buying and the quantity. And we have planted according to those projections, only to come up extremely disappointed and having to compost things that we've grown. You know, one year it was peppers and another year it was kale. And so, you know, first of all, it's just kind of the first few years working with the hub. I don't want to say don't believe what they say, but exercise a little bit of caution in what you're planning. You know, don't put all your eggs in their basket. And then after that, just be conservative in your plantings, or make sure that you have a backup for that product.
I'm going to pipe in on that. It's so funny you say that, Katie, because that's exactly what I was thinking as well. I mean, as a cooperative, you know, we work with institutions and restaurants, and we've oftentimes had, you know, handshake deals with them on certain things, and you know, they turn around 6 months later and say, oh, well, you know what, we really don't need 40 dozen eggs every week, you know, for the next 60 weeks. And so now, and actually it's something I'm dealing with right now. It's like, okay, now what do I do with those 40 dozen eggs? So yeah, it's about being, I don't know, is that tamping down your expectations? I don't know. But yeah, just being careful in your planning for sure.
I mean, I think the flip side to that too is don't overpromise what you can't give. You know, it feels really optimistic in January when you're thinking you can do everything, but then realizing like, oh shoot, there's no way I can do all this in August. You know, why did I overcommit to that? So I would start small.
Good. Any other questions, Zach, from the group?
Not at this time.
Okay, now I have a question. I've been listening to all this, so I'm going to address this to both of you, Katie and Liz. How important is it for the farmer to maintain communication with you on product availability throughout the season? Is that an important issue as an aggregation center, quote unquote? Do you depend on a lot of what they say they're going to grow in order to have the products available?
Not at all for us. Like I said, this is Katie, by the way, that's very ad hoc. So if our food hub partners, our farmers, they're making those communications with their buyers on their own. Okay. So I might connect them with a buyer, you know, just to be a good friend. But I'm not the one who's actually selling their product, and I'm not the one who's actually handling the invoicing. I'm really just storing it and or transporting it for them.
Excellent.
This is Liz. So for us, it's kind of the exact opposite, because I need to know, so we do a lot of contingency planning. We try and have overlap between farms on certain products. You know, now that we have 3 years of data, we're able to look and see, you know, what should we be focused on? What are other items that maybe we should be growing less of? So when there is a fail, yeah, I absolutely need to know as soon as possible, because I need to, you know, reach out to a lot of our institutions and say, you know, we're going to be short on this, or we're going to, you know, we need to make substitutions. So yeah, so it's kind of the other side, is that, yeah, I need to know.
Okay.
One other question came in relation to contracts with your farmer growers. Do you set contracts up with the farmer growers?
I think that would be more toward Liz.
Yeah, this is Katie. We don't have a contract with our growers, but we do have guidelines that they have to follow, whether that's packaging, insurance, food safety requirements, but it isn't a formal contract.
Okay. One other question I have, and I know it's getting close to the end here. So again, to both of you, is food safety an issue when you are either trying to sell to an aggregation center or accepting products from a grower? Do you have to consider food safety? Now, Katie, I know you said that you don't really collect it, you just kind of ship it. So it may not, but selling your products may be a concern. And Liz, just accepting those products from your growers, how does all that work on food safety?
Yeah, that's a big issue for us, not in terms of problems, but we do have standards. And we actually just did a quick review at our last quarterly meeting of what those standards are, and realized that we had a couple of holes that we needed to take care of, in terms of just certain things that should not be coming in dirty. So when we pack our boxes every week, each bag and item is actually looked at, so that we do have eyes on things, so we're able to keep in front of those things. But we have talked about how maybe we should have, maybe we should create a training module to go with food safety.
That's a good idea.
So we reached out to our organic certifier specifically about the potential for cross-contamination and what issues they may have with it. And they're requesting that anything that we send from another farm, whether they're organic or not, has to be in an enclosed container. Like if it's produce in a box, it has to be lined so that there isn't that cross-contamination, which is kind of what we're going for food safety in general for all farmers. But we are going to be going through a gaps audit this year, and so we're really interested to see what they're going to say, because farmers product does go into our cooler, and it does go onto our truck, and so there's definitely a potential for cross contamination, which is concerning. So we'll see what they say.
That's interesting. All right, any other questions come in, Zach?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, I think we are at our 1 o'clock time here. So first off, I want to thank both Katie and Liz for joining me today and discussing their concerns and problems and trying to get started and all these issues that you as a small grower may have, or these questions that you have but maybe were afraid to ask. So thank you both for joining me today. And I think, Zach, that's it for us.
Did you have another slide with the QR code that you can advance to?
Yep,
really quick?
I can. This is just some, there you go.
Excellent. All right. Again, I'd really like to thank Lori, Katie, and Liz for this fabulous presentation, giving us some insight into marketing to food hubs and cooperatives. It's really great. I hope that maybe this can help in the decision-making process for some of you small farms out there. Here's the QR code displayed. You can do the online evaluation now, but you can look for an email from us with the archived webinar on our Illinois Local Foods YouTube channel, as well as a link to the short evaluation. We really appreciate your feedback. And with that, have a great day and a great start to your 2020 growing season.